They said my cameras were against HOA rules. 3 weeks later, I had FBI agents in my living room. But not for the reason you would think. What I caught on those cameras before they made me take them down, it destroyed 6 lives and exposed a $2 million fraud ring. My name is Sarah Martinez, and this is how a simple doorbell camera brought down the most corrupt HOA board in Texas history. I still remember the exact moment everything changed. It was a Tuesday evening in March 2024, and I was sitting on my couch with my laptop, reviewing security footage from my home office. As a cybersecurity analyst for a Fortune 500 company, paranoia was not just a personality trait. It was a professional requirement. My fingers moved across the keyboard, fast-forwarding through hours of footage. Nothing unusual. A delivery truck at 2:15 p.m. The neighbor's cat at 4:30 p.m. Then, at 6:42 p.m., something caught my eye. A white Mercedes SUV pulled into the community clubhouse parking lot. Not unusual by itself, but what happened next made me pause the video and lean closer to the screen. 4 people emerged from the vehicle. I recognized 3 of them immediately. Karen Whitmore, HOA board member, stepped out first, wearing her signature designer sunglasses despite the setting sun. She was followed by 2 men I had seen around the neighborhood, both wearing matching navy blue polo shirts with Prestige Property Services embroidered on the chest. The 4th person was someone I had never seen before. A tall man in an expensive gray suit, carrying a large black duffel bag. They looked around carefully, almost nervously, before heading toward the clubhouse's back entrance, the one that was supposed to be locked and used only for emergency maintenance access. I watched Karen pull out a key and unlock the door. They disappeared inside. Weird, I muttered to myself, making a mental note to review the footage from my backyard camera, which had a partial view of the clubhouse. I did not know it then, but that moment of curiosity would change my life forever. Scene community meeting. 1 week earlier to understand how everything unraveled. I need to take you back. 1 week to the community meeting where this nightmare began. The Meadowbrook Estates Community Center was packed that evening. 73 homeowners filled the chairs, and another dozen stood along the back wall. I sat in the 3rd row, my notebook open, ready to take notes. Old habits from my analyst days. Barbara Chun, our HOA president, stood at the front of the room. She adjusted her red glasses and smiled warmly at the crowd. Barbara had been president for 6 years, and everyone respected her. She was fair, transparent, and actually cared about the community. Good evening, everyone, Barbara began, her voice clear and confident. Thank you all for coming tonight. We have several important items on the agenda, but first, I want to address the concerns about our recent budget allocation. She clicked a remote, and a presentation appeared on the screen behind her. Charts, numbers, breakdowns of community expenses. As you can see, our reserves are healthy. We have approximately $478,000 in our emergency fund, which is well above the state requirement. Point of order. A sharp voice cut through the room. Everyone turned. Karen Whitmore stood up from her seat in the front row. She wore a cream-colored blazer that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her perfectly styled blonde hair did not move as she turned to address the crowd. Barbara, I appreciate your presentation, but I think we need to discuss a more pressing matter. Karen's voice dripped with fake concern. The security situation in our community. Barbara's smile faltered slightly. Karen, that is item 7 on our agenda, if you could please. This cannot wait, Karen interrupted, her voice rising. We have homeowners installing security cameras that violate our community aesthetics. Cameras pointing at their neighbors' homes. Cameras that make people feel unsafe and watched. I felt my stomach drop. I knew exactly where this was going. The board needs to take immediate action, Karen continued, pacing now like a lawyer in a courtroom. I am proposing an emergency amendment to our CC&RS. No external security cameras except for doorbell cameras, and those must be approved by the Architectural Review Committee first. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some people nodded. Others looked confused. I raised my hand. I would like to speak against this proposal. Karen's eyes locked onto mine. Her smile was cold. Of course you would, Ms. Martinez. Since you have what? 6 cameras around your property? 7, I corrected, standing up, and every single one is legally positioned on my property, pointing at my own doors, windows, and driveway. They do not violate anyone's privacy. They make people uncomfortable, Karen shot back. Then those people should not walk onto my property uninvited, I replied calmly. The room erupted in scattered applause and arguments. Barbara raised her hands. Please, everyone, let us have a civil discussion. Sarah, would you like to explain your position? I took a deep breath. I installed my security system after someone broke into my car last November. Since then, I have captured footage that helped police arrest a package thief, identify a hit-and-run driver who damaged Mrs. Patterson's mailbox, and document a contractor who was illegally dumping construction waste in our community pond. More murmurs. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman in the back, called out, "That is true. Sarah's camera caught the man who hit my mailbox. Cost me $850 to replace, and her footage got me compensated." Karen's jaw tightened. That is beside the point. The issue is community standards, and the issue, I interrupted, my voice steady, is that you want to ban the one thing that is actually making this community safer? And I would like to know why. The question hung in the air, like smoke. Karen's face flushed red. How dare you imply? I am not implying anything, I said. I am asking a direct question. Why is the board suddenly so concerned about security cameras when they have never been a problem before? Barbara stepped between us, literally and figuratively. I think we all need to take a breath. Sarah makes valid points about safety. Karen, your concerns about aesthetics are also valid. I propose we table this discussion until next month's meeting, giving everyone time to. I call for an immediate vote. Karen demanded. Seconded, said another board member, a man named Richard Thornton, who always voted with Karen. My heart sank as Barbara looked around the room. As president, she could not override a properly seconded motion. All in favor of implementing emergency restrictions on external security cameras, please raise your hand. I watched in disbelief as hands went up around the room. Not a majority, maybe 35%, but combined with the board's votes, it was Enog. Motion passes, Barbara said quietly, her face showing clear disappointment. Homeowners will have 30 days to remove non-compliant cameras or submit them for architectural review. Karen's smile was triumphant. She looked directly at me. 30 days, Miss Martinez. I expect full compliance. I sat down, my mind racing. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I could not sleep. At 1:37 a.m., I was sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop, reviewing security footage from the past 3 months. If Karen wanted my cameras down so badly, there had to be a reason. I started with the clubhouse, our community's main building, where the board held meetings, where residents could reserve space for parties, where the gym and pool facilities were managed from. I fast-forwarded through hundreds of hours of footage. Days blurred together. Then, patterns started emerging. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, around 7 p.m., the same white Mercedes SUV would pull up to the clubhouse. Karen's car, she would enter through the front door, stay for about 45 minutes, then leave. Normal. Enog board business. Probably, but then I noticed something else. About 20 minutes after Karen arrived, a truck would pull up to the back entrance. Different trucks on different nights. Prestige Property Services, Elite Maintenance Solutions, Apex Construction Group. Men would unload equipment, sometimes tools, sometimes materials. Once, I saw them carrying what looked like copper piping. They would go in through the back door, the one that was supposed to be locked, and stay for 2 to 3 hours. Long after Karen left through the front, I made a spreadsheet. Dates, times, company names, vehicle descriptions. 12 visits in the past 8 weeks, alone. Then I pulled up our HOA's financial reports, which Barbara posted online every month, because she believed in transparency. March's reports showed payments to Prestige Property Services for emergency plumbing repairs, $11,500. February showed payments to Elite Maintenance Solutions for electrical work, $14,200. January showed payments to Apex Construction Group for roof maintenance, $23,800. I cross-referenced the dates. Every single invoice matched a night when I had footage of these trucks at the clubhouse. But here was the thing. I used the clubhouse gym 3 times a week. I had never seen any construction work. No plumbing repairs. No electrical upgrades. No roof maintenance. My hands started shaking as the pieces fell into place. Karen was not worried about privacy or aesthetics. She was worried about evidence. I barely slept 3 hours. By 6 a.m., I was back at my computer, digging deeper. I ran background checks on the 3 companies. It is amazing what you can find with the right database access and a cybersecurity analyst's toolkit. Prestige Property Services had been registered in January 2024. Owner Richard Thornton, the same Richard Thornton who was on the HOA board. The same Richard Thornton who voted with Karen on everything. Elite Maintenance Solutions was registered in December 2023. Owner Karen Whitmore. Apex Construction Group was older, registered in October 2023. Owner Michael Whitmore, Karen's brother. My stomach turned. They were not hiring contractors for community repairs. They were funneling HOA money into their own companies. Companies that were not doing any actual work. I pulled up more financial records. The pattern went back months. Fake invoices inflated costs. Services never rendered. I did the math. Over the past 6 months, approximately $237,000 in HOA funds had been paid to these 3 companies. $237,000, stolen from 73 families who paid their dues in good faith. I sat back in my chair, my mind reeling. This was not just HOA drama. This was fraud. Serious, federal crime-level fraud. And my cameras had caught everything. No wonder Karen wanted them gone. I needed to tell someone. But who? Going to Karen was obviously out of the question. The other board members, half of them were probably in on it. Barbara. I had to tell Barbara. I picked up my phone and called her number, which was listed on the HOA website. Hello. This is Barbara Chun. Barbara. Hi. This is Sarah Martinez. I need to talk to you about something important. Something about the HOA finances. There was a pause. Of course, Sarah. Would you like to meet at the clubhouse? No, I said quickly. Too quickly. Could we meet somewhere else? Maybe coffee? It is sensitive. Another pause. Longer this time. You have me concerned. How about Riverside Coffee Shop in 1 hour? Perfect. Thank you, Barbara. I spent the next 45 minutes compiling everything. Screenshots, spreadsheets, video footage, excerpts. I put it all on a USB drive and made 3 backup copies. As I was leaving my house, I noticed something that made me stop cold. Karen's white Mercedes was parked 3 houses down, just sitting there. Had she been watching my house? I forced myself to walk normally to my car, fighting the urge to run. As I drove past, I glanced over. Karen was on her phone, but her eyes followed my car. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. This was bigger than I thought, and possibly more dangerous. Barbara was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. She smiled warmly, but I could see the concern in her eyes behind those red glasses. I ordered you a latte, she said, as I sat down. You look like you need it. Barbara, I am about to show you something that is going to be very difficult to hear. I pulled out my laptop and the USB drive, but I need you to look at everything before you respond. Can you do that? Her smile faded. She straightened her red blazer and nodded. Show me. For the next 30 minutes, I walked her through everything. The footage, the fake companies, the invoices, the timeline, the stolen money. Barbara's face went through a dozen expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger, devastation. By the end, tears were streaming down her face. I trusted her, Barbara whispered. For 3 years, Karen has been on the board, and I trusted her. How could I not see this? Because she was good at hiding it, I said gently. And because you are honest, so you assume other people are too. Barbara wiped her eyes, and suddenly her expression changed. The sadness was replaced by cold determination. She looked up at me, her jaw set. We need to go to the police, right now. I was hoping you would say that. We stood up, gathering our things. As we headed for the door, my phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. You should have removed those cameras when you had the chance. Last warning. I showed the text to Barbara. Her face went pale. Sarah, I think you might be in danger. We need to. The coffee shop door swung open. Karen Whitmore walked in, followed by 2 large men in prestige property services. Polo shirts. She saw us immediately. Her eyes went to my laptop, and I knew, in that moment, that everything was about to get much, much worse. Sarah and Barbara have discovered the fraud and are about to go to the police, but Karen has found them at the coffee shop with backup. What will happen next? What would you do if you discovered your HOA was stealing from your community? Would you confront them or go straight to the police? Let me know in the comments. Recap. Sarah and Barbara discovered Karen's $237,000 fraud scheme. Just as they were about to go to the police, Karen walked into the coffee shop with 2 intimidating men from her fake construction company. Time seemed to slow down. Karen stood in the doorway, her designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, her eyes locked on my laptop. The 2 men flanking her were both over 6 feet tall, their prestige property services polo shirts stretched tight across muscular chests. Barbara's hand found my arm, gripping it tightly. Sarah, Karen said, her voice sickeningly sweet, and, Barbara, what a coincidence running into you here. It was not a coincidence. She had followed me. Maybe she had been watching my house all morning. Karen, Barbara said, her voice steady despite her pale face. We were just leaving. Were you? Karen walked closer, her heels clicking on the tile floor. The coffee shop had maybe 10 other customers, but suddenly it felt very empty, because it looked like you two were having quite an intense conversation. Sarah, is that your laptop? The one with all your security camera footage? My mind raced. She was confirming everything. She knew exactly what I had. I don't know what you're talking about, I said, closing my laptop and sliding it into my bag. Karen laughed, but there was no humor in it. Please, don't insult my intelligence. You've been watching footage for weeks. Your cameras caught something you shouldn't have seen, didn't they? One of the men moved slightly, positioning himself between us and the door. Barbara stood up, drawing herself to her full height. Even though she was 8 inches shorter than Karen, she somehow seemed taller in that moment. Her red blazer looked like armor. Karen, if you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to worry about, Barbara said. But your behavior right now is very concerning. You're making threats in a public place. Threats? Karen's eyebrows rose. I haven't threatened anyone. Have I, gentlemen? The 2 men shook their heads silently. See. No threats. Just a friendly conversation between neighbors. Karen leaned on our table, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the surface. But let me explain something to you both. You're playing a very dangerous game, making accusations about the HOA board based on some grainy security footage. That's defamation. Slander. The HOA has lawyers, very good lawyers, who would be happy to file a lawsuit that would cost you everything you own. We're going to the police, I said, standing up and shouldering my bag. This conversation is over. The police? Karen actually laughed. And tell them what? That you think the HOA board is corrupt. Based on what evidence? Video of trucks at the clubhouse. Invoices from legitimate companies doing legitimate work. Legitimate companies that you and Richard Thornton own. I shot back. Companies that were registered 2 to 4 months ago. Companies that have received over $230,000 in payments for work that was never actually done. Karen's smile froze. For just a second, I saw fear flash across her face. You can't prove that, she said quietly. Actually, Barbara said, pulling out her phone, Sarah sent me all her documentation, and I've been going through the HOA financial records for the past 3 years. The pattern goes back much further than 6 months. Karen found irregularities, totaling over $895,000. $895,000. Even I hadn't realized it was that much. Karen's face went white, then red. You have no idea what you're interfering with. You're right, Barbara said, but the FBI will figure it out. That word, FBI. It hung in the air like a bomb. Karen stepped back, her composure cracking. You're making a huge mistake, both of you. The only mistake was trusting you, Barbara replied. Karen stared at us for a long moment, then turned sharply and walked out. The 2 men followed her, but not before one of them gave us a look that made my blood run cold. When they were gone, I realized I was shaking. Barbara sat down heavily, her hand over her heart. That was terrifying, she whispered. Barbara, are you okay? Your heart, I'm fine. Just adrenaline. She looked up at me. But Sarah, she's right about one thing. This is dangerous. Maybe you should let me handle it from here. You have a career, a life. I'm retiring next year anyway. I can afford. No? I interrupted. We're in this together. Besides, my cameras caught the evidence. The police will need my testimony. Barbara nodded slowly. Then we need to be smart about this. Not the local police. They might have connections to Karen or the board. We need to go higher. The FBI field office is in downtown Austin, I said. About 45 minutes from here. Do you have copies of everything? I patted my bag. USB drive, cloud backup, and I emailed encrypted copies to my personal and work accounts. Barbara smiled, despite everything. You really are a cybersecurity analyst. Paranoia is a professional requirement, I said, echoing my own thoughts from yesterday. It felt like a lifetime ago. Seen highway to Austin. 1 hour later, we took Barbara's car, a practical Honda sedan. Figuring it would be less conspicuous than my bright blue Toyota, I sat in the passenger seat with my laptop on my knees, double-checking all the files for the 100th time. Sarah, Barbara said, after 20 minutes of silence. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you dig so deep into this? Most people would have just removed their cameras and moved on. I thought about that. My dad was a police detective. He retired 5 years ago, moved to Oregon with my mom. But growing up, he always told me that the worst criminals aren't the ones who rob banks or steal cars. They're the ones who abuse positions of trust, the accountants who embezzle from charities, the lawyers who steal from estates, the HOA board members who steal from their neighbors. Barbara was quiet for a moment. He sounds like a good man. He is. I called him this morning, before I called you. Told him everything, he said. I smiled at the memory. He said, "That's my girl. Go get them. I look forward to meeting him someday." My phone rang. Unknown number. I glanced at Barbara, then answered on speaker. "Hello, Miss Martinez." A man's voice, unfamiliar. "My name is David Chun. I'm an attorney representing the Meadowbrook Estates HOA board." Barbara's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "How did you get this number?" I asked. "It's listed in the HOA directory. Miss Martinez, I'm calling to inform you that the board has filed an emergency injunction against you. You're being ordered to immediately surrender all security camera footage and any copies thereof. Failure to comply will result in legal action, including but not limited to eviction from the community." Eviction? I almost laughed. You can't evict someone for having security cameras. We can evict someone for harassment, defamation, and interfering with board business. You have 24 hours to comply. The injunction will be served to you formally within the hour. The call ended. Barbara and I looked at each other. "They're moving fast," she said. "Too fast. Too fast. That means they're scared." I pulled out my laptop again. And if they filed an injunction this quickly, they must have a judge in their pocket, or at least a lawyer who knows how to file emergency motions. "Can they really evict you?" "Not legally. Not for this. But they can make my life hell while we fight it. And fighting It costs money, lawyer fees, court costs. I trailed off. That was exactly what Karen had threatened, bury me in legal fees until I couldn't afford to fight anymore. I have some savings, Barbara said, and I know several lawyers who owe me favors from my years as president. We'll fight this together. I looked at this woman, this 65-year-old HOA president who was risking everything to do the right thing, and felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you, Barbara. Thank me when it's over. Right now, we need to get to the FBI before they serve you with that injunction. The J.J. Pickle Federal Building was an imposing concrete structure in the heart of downtown Austin. We parked in a nearby garage and walked in, both of us trying to look more confident than we felt. The lobby was all marble and security checkpoints. A stern-looking guard directed us to the visitor desk. We need to report a crime, Barbara said to the receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes. What type of crime? Fraud, Embezzlement, involving a homeowners association. The receptionist's expression didn't change. She probably heard everything. Do you have evidence? I held up the USB drive, about $895,000 worth. That got her attention. She picked up a phone. Let me get someone from the white-collar crime division. We waited for what felt like hours, but was probably only 15 minutes. Finally, a man in a dark suit approached us. He was in his mid-40s, with graying hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. I'm Special Agent Michael Brooks, he said, shaking our hands. I understand you have information about a fraud case. Yes, Barbara said. We're from the Meadowbrook Estates, HOA, in Lakewood Springs. I'm the president, and this is Sarah Martinez, one of our homeowners. We've discovered that our board treasurer and another board member have been funneling HOA funds into fake construction companies they own. Agent Brooks's expression remained neutral, but I saw interest flicker in his eyes. How much money are we talking about? At least $895,000 over 3 years, possibly more. Now I had his full attention. Come with me. He led us through security, up an elevator, down a long hallway, and into a small conference room. Standard government issue. Gray walls, a metal table, uncomfortable chairs. Start from the beginning, he said, pulling out a notepad. For the next hour, Barbara and I walked him through everything. I showed him the security footage, the financial records, the fake company registrations, the timeline of invoices and truck visits. Barbara provided historical context about the HOA's finances, Karen's behavior, the board meetings. Agent Brooks took meticulous notes. He asked detailed questions. He made copies of everything. Finally, he sat back in his chair. This is solid. Really solid. You've essentially done our job for us. So, you'll investigate? Barbara asked hopefully. Absolutely. This falls under several federal statutes. Why a fraud? Because they used electronic transfers, possibly money laundering if they tried to hide the funds. And HOA fraud cases fall under our jurisdiction when the amounts exceed $250,000. What happens now? I asked. Now, we open a formal investigation. We'll need full statements from both of you. We'll subpoena the HOA as complete financial records, bank statements for the fake companies, everything. We'll need your security footage as evidence. All of it. Karam and the board have filed an injunction against Sarah, Barbara said, trying to force her to delete all the footage. Agent Brooks frowned. When? About an hour ago. We left before they could serve it. Don't delete anything. Don't give them anything. In fact, he pulled out a business card. If they try to serve you, call me immediately. Interfering with a federal investigation is a serious crime. Once I open this case officially, any attempt to destroy evidence or intimidate witnesses will land them in even more trouble. How long will the investigation take? Barbara asked. Hard to say. Couple months, minimum. These cases are complicated, but based on what you've shown me, I'm confident we'll have enough to bring charges. Charges, I repeated. You mean criminal charges? Yes. We're talking fraud, embezzlement, possibly money laundering, conspiracy. If convicted, your board members are looking at serious prison time, 5 to 20 years, depending on how many charges stick. Barbara's hand covered her mouth. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't think about prison. They stole almost $900,000 from their neighbors, Agent Brook said gently, but firmly. This isn't a victimless crime. That money could have gone to community improvements, reserve funds for emergencies, lower HOA dues. Instead, it went into their pockets. That's serious. I thought about my neighbors, retirees on fixed incomes, paying $620 a month in HOA dues, young families saving for their kids' college funds, single parents working 2 jobs, and all that money stolen by people they trusted. They deserve to go to prison, I said quietly. Agent Brooks nodded. I agree. Now, let's get your full statements recorded. This is going to be a long afternoon. Scene parking garage early evening. It was almost 6 p.m. when we finally left the FBI building. My hand cramped from signing documents. My throat was dry from talking. But I felt something I hadn't felt since this whole nightmare began. Hope. We did it, Barbara said as we walked to her car. We actually did it. Agent Brooks seemed confident. I agreed. Did you see his face when I showed him the footage of them loading copper piping into their trucks? He said that alone was enough for a theft charge. Sarah, I want you to know. Barbara stopped walking and turned to face me. Her eyes were bright with tears behind her red glasses. I want you to know how brave you've been. How brave you are. You could have just removed your cameras and looked the other way. Most people would have. You didn't, I pointed out. I'm the president. It's my responsibility. But you're just a homeowner who wanted to feel safe in her own home. And instead you uncovered corruption that could have destroyed our entire community. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Then Barbara's. Then mine again. We looked at our screens. Text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You've both made a huge mistake. Delete everything and drop it now, or there will be consequences. Forward that to Agent Brooks, Barbara said immediately. I was already doing it. Within 2 minutes, my phone rang. Agent Brooks. Miss Martinez, I just got your message. Do not respond to that text. Do not engage with them at all. I'm documenting this as witness intimidation. If you receive any more threats, contact me immediately. Will this help the case? I asked. Absolutely. They're digging themselves deeper with every move. He paused. Miss Martinez, Miss Chun, I need you both to be careful for the next few days. People facing serious federal charges sometimes do desperate things. Watch your... Don't go anywhere alone if you can help it. After he hung up, Barbara and I stood in the parking garage, suddenly very aware of how isolated we were. You can stay at my house tonight, Barbara offered. I have a guest room. I should probably go home. Make sure everything's secure. Then I'm coming with you. We drove back to Meadowbrook Estates in tense silence. As we pulled into my neighborhood, I noticed something that made my heart skip a beat. Karen's white Mercedes was parked on my street. Again, 4 houses down from mine, and she was sitting in it, watching my house. Barbara saw it too. I'm calling Agent Brooks. No, wait. I pulled out my phone and opened my security camera app. Let's see what she does when we pull in. We drove past Karen's car, slowly. She didn't even try to hide. She just watched us with cold eyes. I pulled into my driveway, and Barbara and I got out quickly, heading for my front door. I unlocked it, and we slipped inside, locking it behind us. I immediately pulled up the security camera feed on my living room TV. Karen sat in her car for another 5 minutes. Then Richard Thornton's truck pulled up behind her. They talked through their car windows for a moment. Then both vehicles drove away. They're coordinating, Barbara said. Planning something. Let me check all the cameras, I said, pulling up the feeds from around my property. Everything looked normal. Front yard, clear. Backyard, clear. Side gates, locked. Driveway, empty except for my car and Barbara. Then I noticed something on the garage camera, something that made my blood run cold. While we were in Austin, someone had tried to break into my garage. The side door showed fresh scratches around the lock. Recent within the last few hours. Barbara, I said slowly. "Look at this!" She leaned in to see the screen. "Is that—" Someone tried to break in. While we were reporting them to the FBI, they were here trying to destroy the evidence. We looked at each other. "They failed, though," Barbara said, pointing at the screen. The lock held. "This time, but they'll try again." I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling Agent Brooks back, and then I'm calling a locksmith to upgrade every lock on this house." As I dialed, I looked at the security camera feed again. My cameras, the ones Karen tried so hard to ban, the ones that had just documented attempted breaking and entering. Ironic, really. Karen tried to eliminate the evidence of her crimes by banning the cameras, but in doing so, she had just created even more evidence against herself. Sarah's house was targeted while she was at the FBI. Karen and Richard are coordinating surveillance. How far will they go to protect their secret, and what will they try next? Would you feel safe staying in your home after discovering this? Let me know what you would do in the comments. Sarah and Barbara reported the $895,000 fraud to the FBI. While they were gone, someone tried to break into Sarah's garage. Karen and Richard are now coordinating surveillance on Sarah's house. The investigation has officially begun. The locksmith had cost me $1,100. New deadbolts on every door, reinforced strike plates, security bars for the sliding glass doors. My house was now locked down like a fortress. I had not slept well in 72 hours. Every sound made me jump. Every car that drove past made me check the cameras. Barbara had stayed with me the first 2 nights, but I insisted she'll go home. No reason for both of us to be exhausted. My laptop sat open on the coffee table. Security feeds displayed across multiple windows. It was Thursday morning, 9:45 a.m., and I was supposed to be working from home. Instead, I was watching Karen's house. She had not left. In 2 days, no white Mercedes pulling out of her driveway. No trips to the clubhouse. Nothing. My phone rang. Agent Brooks. "Miss Martinez, I have news. We executed search warrants this morning on the homes of Karen Whitmore, Richard Torton, and Michael Whit. We also seized all financial records from the 3 fake construction companies." My heart raced. And we found exactly what we expected to find. Bank statements showing the HOA payments going into their accounts, then being transferred to personal accounts and offshore holdings. We found forged invoices, fake work orders, even a second set of books. They weren't just stealing, they were documenting their own crimes. Why would they keep all that evidence? Arrogance. They thought they were too smart to get caught. We see it all the time with white-collar criminals. They keep records because they want to track their profits, and they convince themselves they're untouchable. I allowed myself a small smile. So what happens now? Now, we build the case. But Miss Martinez, I need to warn you about something. We arrested all 3 of them this morning. Karen, Richard, and Michael. They're being arraigned tomorrow. They'll probably make bail. My smile vanished. They'll be released, most likely. The charges are serious, but they're not considered flight risks yet, and they have no prior criminal records. The judge will probably set bail high, maybe $250,000 each, but they can afford it. So they'll be back in the neighborhood. Yes, which is why I need you to be extremely careful. We've documented the intimidation attempts, the break-in attempt, all of it. But until trial, they're going to be free, and they're going to be angry. After he hung up, I sat staring at the phone. They were going to be released. Karen would be back on my street within 24 hours. I called Barbara. "I heard," she said before I could speak. "Agent Brooks called me to—" "Sarah, I think you should stay somewhere else for a while. Maybe with family? My parents are in Oregon. That's 2,000 miles away. I can't just abandon my house, my job, my life because of them. Then stay with me. Please. My house has an alarm system, and I live on the other side of town." I was about to refuse when I looked at my security camera feed. A car I did not recognize was driving slowly past my house. 3rd time in the last hour. "Okay, I said. "Let me pack a bag." Barbara called an emergency community meeting. Every homeowner received an email with the subject line, "Urgent HOA Board, Misconduct, and FBI Investigation." The clubhouse was packed. Over 90 people crammed into a space designed for 70. People stood along the walls, sat on the floor, crowded in the doorway. The energy in the room was electric, angry, frightened. Barbara stood at the front, wearing her red blazer-like armor. I sat in the front row, my laptop bag close to my side. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Barbara began. Her voice was strong, clear. "I know many of you have heard rumors over the past few days. I am here to tell you the truth." She clicked the remote. A presentation appeared on the screen. 3 days ago, Sarah Martinez and I went to the FBI with evidence of large-scale fraud within our HOA board. This morning, the FBI arrested 3 individuals, Karen Whitmore, Richard Tarnton, and Michael Whitmore. They're charged with wire fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and conspiracy. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone shouted, "How much?" "At least $895,000 over 3 years, possibly more as the investigation continues." The room erupted, people shouting, crying, demanding answers. Barbara raised her hands, waiting for silence. "I know you have questions. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. This money was stolen from all of us, from our community reserves, from our maintenance funds, from the dues we paid in good faith. Where's our money now?" Someone called out, "The FBI has frozen their accounts. There is approximately $423,000 in recoverable assets. The rest was spent or hidden in offshore accounts that'll take time to trace." More angry shouts. "What about our emergency fund, Senora?" Patterson's voice, shaky but determined. "I was told we had over $478,000 in reserves." Barbara's expression was grim. "We have $92,000 left. The rest was stolen." The room went silent. Then someone started crying. Then someone else started yelling. Within seconds, it was chaos. I stood up, facing the crowd. "Listen, everyone, please, listen." Slowly, the room quieted. "I know you're angry," I said. "I'm angry too. But we need to focus on what happens next. The FBI has a strong case. These people will go to prison. We will recover as much money as possible, and we will rebuild our community reserves." "Easy for you to say." A man in the back called out, "You're the one who caught them. You're probably going to be on the news. Get your 15 minutes of fame. Meanwhile, the rest of us are out hundreds of thousands of dollars." I didn't do this for fame. I shot back. I did it because it was right, because someone had to stand up to them. "You did it because you wanted to keep your cameras," someone else shouted. Barbara stepped forward. "That is enough." Sarah risked her safety, her peace of mind, and her home to expose this fraud. While you're pointing fingers at her, Karen Whitmore tried to break into her garage to destroy evidence. Someone has been stalking her house for days. She has received threatening messages. So, before you criticize her, remember that she's the reason we know the truth at all. The room went quiet again, shamefaced. The man who had yelled looked away. An elderly woman raised her hand. "What do we do now?" "About the HOA, I mean." "We hold an emergency election," Barbara said. "We need a new board. Clean slate. People we can trust." "I nominate Barbara to stay as president," someone called out. "Seconded." Barbara smiled sadly. "I appreciate that, but I think we need fresh leadership. I'll stay on in an advisory role if needed, but it's time for new blood and nominate." "Sarah Martinez." I froze. "What?" "No, I can't." Second, at least 5 people called out. "I'm not qualified," I protested. "I've only lived here for 2 years. I don't know anything about running an HOA." "You know how to catch thieves?" Mrs. Patterson said, standing up slowly. "You know how to stand up to bullies. You know right from wrong. That's more than our last board knew. The room erupted in applause. I looked at Barbara helplessly. She smiled and raised her hand. All in favor of Sarah Martinez serving as interim HOA president until we can hold proper elections. A forest of hands went up. At least 75% of the room. "Congratulations, Madam President," Barbara said, extending her hand. I shook it, still in shock. "I have no idea what I'm doing." "That makes you perfect for the job. Anyone who thinks they know everything is usually hiding something." She squeezed my hand. "And you won't be alone. I'll help you every step of the way." The meeting had broken up, but small groups still clustered in the parking lot, talking in urgent voices. I was gathering my things from Barbara's car when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Karen's white Mercedes pulled into the parking lot. She had made bail, of course. She had. Barbara saw her at the same time. "Oh no!" Karen parked and got out of her car. She looked different. Her clothes were rumpled. Her hair, usually perfect, was messy. Her eyes were red, either from crying or from lack of sleep. She walked toward the clubhouse, saw the crowd, and stopped. Someone in the crowd pointed at her. Then someone else. Within seconds, everyone was staring. "How dare you show your face here?" Mrs. Patterson's voice rang out. "Thief! Criminal!" Karen's face crumpled. "I just wanted to get some things from my office." "You don't have an office anymore," Barbara said, stepping forward. "You're no longer on the board. You're no longer welcome here." "This is my home," Karen said, her voice breaking. "I live here. I have rights." "You stole from us." A man stepped forward, his face red with anger. "My wife and I have been saving for our daughter's college fund, and every month we paid our HOA dues. We were basically paying you to steal from us." More people moved forward. The crowd was getting ugly. I saw the anger, the mob mentality forming. "Everyone stop!" I shouted, moving between Karen and the crowd. "This is not how we do this." "Are you defending her?" someone demanded. "No. I'm stopping us from doing something we'll regret. Karen will face justice. The FBI has arrested her. She's going to trial. She will go to prison. But we are not a mob. We are a community." I turned to Karen. "You need to leave. Now. Before this gets worse." Karen looked at me with pure hatred. "You did this. You destroyed my life." "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed your own life. I just exposed what you were doing." Tears ran down Karen's face, ruining what was left of her makeup. "I hope you're happy. I hope you enjoy being president of this pathetic little community. Because you're going to regret this. I promise you that." "Is that another threat?" Barbara pulled out her phone. "Because Special Agent Brooks would love to hear it." Karen's face went white. She looked around at the hostile crowd, then turned and walked quickly back to her car. She drove away with a screech of tires. The crowd slowly dispersed, people talking in low voices, some looking ashamed of their anger, others still furious. Barbara put her hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing, stopping them from confronting her." "I know, but I meant what I said. I'm going to regret this." I looked at Barbara. She's not done. They never arrested her brother's business partner, the man with the duffel bag. They're still out there, and they're desperate. "You're staying with me tonight." "No arguments." "No arguments," I agreed. I couldn't sleep. At 2:17 a.m., I was sitting in Barbara's guest room, watching the security camera feeds from my house on my laptop. Everything looked quiet. Too quiet. Then I saw it. A shadow moving along my fence line. Too big to be a cat or dog. I zoomed in on the camera. A person dressed in black, wearing a ski mask, was creeping along the side of my house. My hands started shaking. I grabbed my phone and called 911. 911, what's your emergency?" "There's someone breaking into my house." "I'm not there, but I'm watching on my security cameras. They're on the east side of the property, trying the windows." "What's the address?" I gave it to them, watching as the figure tried window after window. They were testing them, looking for a way in. Officers are en route. Please stay on the line. I'm calling the FBI agent handling my case, I said. Someone is trying to destroy evidence related to a federal investigation. I hung up and called Agent Brooks. He answered on the second ring, voice groggy. Miss Martinez, someone's breaking into my house right now. I'm watching it on my cameras. Police are on the way, but I think this is related to the fraud case. I'm 15 minutes from your address. Don't go there. Let the police handle it. I'm not there. I'm at a friend's house. Good. Stay there. I'm on my way. I switched back to the camera feed. The figure had moved to the back door. They were doing something to the lock, working on it with tools. Then I heard a siren in the distance on the camera feed. The figure's head snapped up. They looked around frantically, then ran. They jumped my back fence and disappeared into the greenbelt behind my house. Police cars pulled up out front. Lights flashing. Officers spread out around the property, flashlights cutting through the darkness. I watched for another 20 minutes as they searched. They didn't find anyone. But they did find something. One of the officers held up evidence bags. Tools. A crowbar. Bolt cutters. And something else I couldn't quite see. My phone rang. Agent Brooks. Miss Martinez, are you watching your cameras? Yes. Did they catch whoever it was? No, but they left behind tools. And we found something interesting. A gasoline can? Empty. The back door and surrounding area smelled like gasoline. My blood went cold. They were going to burn my house down. It looks that way. If you hadn't been watching your cameras, if you had been asleep inside. He didn't finish the sentence. They tried to kill me. They tried to destroy evidence and possibly scare you into dropping the case. But Sarah, this changes everything. Attempted arson is a serious felony. When we catch whoever did this, and we will, they're going to federal prison for a very long time. I sat on the guest room bed, my whole body shaking. How did they know I wasn't home? They must be watching you, following you. I'm going to request protective custody for you and Miss Chun. This has escalated beyond white-collar crime. After he hung up, I sat in the dark, staring at my laptop screen. My empty house, now swarming with police and FBI agents. My home almost burned to the ground, all because I had security cameras that caught the wrong people doing the wrong things. There was a soft knock on the door. Barbara came in, wearing a bathrobe, her red glasses slightly crooked. I heard you on the phone. What happened? I told her everything. By the end, she was sitting next to me on the bed, her arm around my shoulders. You're not going back there, she said. Not until they catch whoever did this. I can't live in fear forever. Barbara. No. But you can be smart. And being smart means staying alive long enough to see them convicted. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then Barbara spoke again. Sarah, do you regret it? Exposing them? I thought about that, about everything I had been through. The threats, the fear, the attempted break-ins, the arson attempt. My life turned upside down. Then I thought about the 90 families in our community, the stolen money, the betrayed trust, the justice that was finally coming. No, I said. I don't regret it. Not for a second. Barbara smiled and squeezed my shoulder. That's because you have integrity. That's why you're going to be a good president. If I survive long enough to take office, you will. We both will, because the good guys always win in the end. She paused. At least, they do if they're careful, and they have good security cameras. Despite everything, I laughed. Did you just make a joke about my cameras? Too soon? Little bit. We sat together in the dark, watching the police lights flash on my laptop screen, waiting for the sun to rise on another day of this nightmare. But at least we were not facing it alone. Someone tried to burn down Sarah's house with gasoline. Karen made bail and is free. The mysterious man with the duffel bag is still out there, who tried to commit arson. And how far will they go to stop the investigation? Have you ever had to choose between staying silent and speaking up, when it could put you in danger? Share your story in the comments. Someone tried to burn down Sarah's house with gasoline. Karen, Richard, and Michael were arrested and released on bail. Sarah was elected interim HOA president. The FBI investigation continues as danger escalates. Agent Brooks placed a photograph on the table in front of me. Do you recognize this man? I looked at the picture, the man from the security footage, the one with the duffel bag. Except now I could see his face clearly. That's him. The fourth person who went into the clubhouse with Karen. His name is Vincent Delgado. He's a professional money launderer, based out of Houston. We arrested him yesterday morning at the airport, trying to fly to the Cayman Islands with $300,000 in cash. $375,000, I repeated. That's almost half of what they stole. Exactly. He was the middleman. Karen and Richard would pay their fake companies, transfer the money to Vincent, and he would launder it through a network of offshore accounts. Then he would return it to them, minus his cut, making it look clean. Barbara leaned forward. So you have him. We have him. And he's cooperating. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he's giving us everything. Bank account numbers, transaction records, offshore holdings. He even wore a wire for us yesterday and called Richard Thornton. Agent Brooks pressed play on a recording device. Richard's voice came through, panicked. Vince, thank God. Did you get out? Not yet, man. But I need you to listen carefully. They're watching my accounts. We need to move the remaining funds now. Tonight. Are you crazy? The FBI already seized most of our accounts. Not all of them. I still have access to the Panama accounts. $542,000. But we need to move it before they find it. A long pause. How? Meet me at the usual place. Midnight. Bring Karen. Okay. Okay. We'll be there. The recording ended. Agent Brooks smiled. That was last night. We arrested both of them at the meeting point. They're now facing additional charges of conspiracy to commit money laundering and attempting to hide assets during a federal investigation. How much prison time are they looking at? I asked. With the original charges plus the new ones, Karen and Richard are looking at 12 to 18 years. Michael might get 8 to 10 since he was less involved. Vincent will get 6 to 8 with his cooperation deal. 12 to 18 years. It was real now. Final. What about the arson? Barbara asked. Do you know who tried to burn down Sarah's house? Agent Brooks's expression darkened. We're still investigating. The tools were wiped clean, no fingerprints, but we have DNA from a cigarette butt found near your back fence. We're running it through databases now. You think it was one of them? I asked. Honestly, I think they hired someone. Vincent had connections to some dangerous people. We're looking into known associates who might have been contracted for intimidation. The thought made my skin crawl. They had been so desperate to stop me that they had hired someone to burn down my house. When is the trial? Barbara asked. 6 months. Maybe 8. Federal cases take time. But Miss Martinez, Miss Chun, I want you both to know something. He looked at us seriously. What you did took incredible courage. Most people would have looked the other way. You didn't. And because of that, justice is being served. Life slowly returned to normal, or at least a new version of normal. I moved back into my house after the police cleared it. I installed even more security cameras. My neighbors joked that my house was now more secure than the Pentagon. As interim president, I worked with Barbara to completely overhaul the HOA's financial systems. We implemented mandatory audits, transparent accounting, and term limits for board members. We recovered $423,000 from frozen accounts and used it to begin rebuilding our reserves. The community rallied together in ways I never expected. Mrs. Patterson organized a neighborhood watch. The young families started a communication network. People actually talked to each other again, looked out for each other. Karen's house went up for sale. She had moved in with her brother while awaiting trial. Richard Thornton's house was foreclosed on after he couldn't make mortgage payments from jail. The clubhouse felt different now. lighter somehow. Like a weight had been lifted. The day of the trial arrived on a cold morning in October 2024. Barbara and I sat in the front row of the courtroom, watching as Karen Whitmore, Richard Thornton, Michael Whitmore, and Vincent Delgado were led in wearing orange jumpsuits. Karen looked nothing like the polished, confident woman who had tried to ban my security cameras. Her hair was gray at the roots. Her face was lined with stress. She had aged 10 years in 6 months. She saw me in the courtroom, and her eyes filled with hatred. But there was something else there, too. Defeat. She knew she had lost. The trial lasted 3 days. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. My security footage, played on large screens for the jury, showed every truck arrival, every suspicious meeting, every piece of the conspiracy. Barbara testified about the financial irregularities. Agent Brooks explained the money laundering scheme. Vincent Delgado, in a plea deal, described exactly how they had stolen and hidden nearly $900,000. Karen's lawyer tried to argue that she had made mistakes in judgment, but had not intended to defraud anyone. The jury didn't buy it. On the afternoon of the third day, the jury returned after only 2 hours of deliberation on the count of wire fraud. How do you find guilty on the count of embezzlement? Guilty. On the count of money laundering? Guilty. 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 18 counts for Karen. 16 for Richard. 12 for Michael. 8 for Vincent. Karen broke down crying. Richard sat motionless, staring at the table. Michael put his head in his hands. The judge set sentencing for 4 weeks later. Barbara and I returned to the same coffee shop where this had all begun 6 months ago. We sat at the same table. Barbara ordered the same lot. "We did it," she said, raising her cup. "Justice served." I clinked my cup against hers. "We did it. How does it feel?" I thought about that. Honestly, exhausting, scary, surreal, but also right. It feels right. Barbara smiled. "That's because it is right. You stood up when no one else would. You refused to be intimidated. You chose truth over comfort." "We chose it," I corrected. "I couldn't have done this without you, and I couldn't have exposed it without your cameras." She laughed. "The very cameras Karen tried so hard to ban. Ironic, isn't it?" "Very me." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping our coffee. "What happens now?" Barbara asked. "Are you going to run for permanent president?" "I think so. Someone has to rebuild the trust in our community. Might as well be the person who broke the old system." "You'll be excellent." "You already are." The courtroom was packed for sentencing, every seat filled with homeowners from Meadow Estates, FBI agents, reporters, and curious onlookers. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Morrison, reviewed the sentencing reports. Then she looked up at the defendants. "This court has rarely seen such a clear-cut case of betrayal of trust," she began. "You, Karen Whitmore, Richard Thornton, and Michael Whitmore were given positions of authority in your community. People trusted you to manage their money, to maintain their properties, to act in their best interests. Instead, you stole from them. You created fake companies. You falsified records. You laundered money. And when you were discovered, you attempted to intimidate witnesses and destroy evidence." Karen was crying silently. Richard stared straight ahead. Michael's leg bounced nervously. "The victims in this case are not corporations or insurance companies. They are families, retirees living on fixed incomes, young couples saving for their children's education, single parents working multiple jobs. Every dollar you stole was a dollar taken from people who could not afford to lose it." Judge Morrison looked down at her notes. "Karen Whitmore, you orchestrated this scheme. You recruited others. You threatened witnesses. You are sentenced to 16 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. You are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $895,000. Karen sobbed loudly. "Richard Thornton, You participated willingly and created false documentation. You are sentenced to 14 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. You are ordered to pay restitution jointly with Ms. Whitmore. Richard closed his eyes. Michael Whitmore. While less involved, you knew what was happening and benefited from it. You are sentenced to 9 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You are ordered to pay restitution jointly with the others. Michael's shoulders shook. Winston Delgado, in light of your cooperation with federal investigators, you are sentenced to 7 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. The judge banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. Federal marshals led them away. Karen looked back one last time, her eyes finding mine. I felt no satisfaction, no joy, just a quiet sense that justice had been done. We held a special community meeting, not to discuss problems, but to celebrate solutions. Barbara stood at the podium, wearing her signature red blazer and red glasses. I want to thank everyone for your patience during these difficult months. Our community has been through trauma, but we've come through it stronger. Applause filled the room. Our financial reserves have been partially restored. We've implemented new oversight systems. We've elected a new board dedicated to transparency and accountability. And most importantly, we've learned that silence in the face of wrongdoing helps no one. She looked at me. Sarah, would you like to say a few words? I walked to the podium, suddenly nervous. 93 people looking at me expectantly. 6 months ago, I just wanted to feel safe in my home. I installed security cameras because my car had been broken into. I never imagined those cameras would expose a $1 million fraud ring. I paused. Actually, 895,000. But who's counting? Light laughter rippled through the crowd. I've learned something through all of this. Evil thrives when good people stay silent. Karen Whitmore stole from us for 3 years because no one questioned her. No one looked too closely. No one wanted to cause trouble. I looked around the room, but one person asking questions, one person refusing to look away, one person choosing courage over comfort, that can change everything, Moria Pluse. So I'm asking all of you, in your own lives, when you see something wrong, speak up. When you see injustice, act. When someone tells you to remove your security cameras, I smiled. Maybe ask them what they're trying to hide. The room erupted in laughter and applause. Barbara hugged me as I stepped away from the podium. Perfect, she whispered. 3 weeks later, I sat on my front porch, laptop open, reviewing the HOA's financial reports for the month. Everything balanced, everything transparent, everything honest. A car pulled up, my parents' SUV. They had driven from Oregon to visit, to see for themselves that I was okay. My dad got out first, a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He walked up to my porch and looked at my array of security cameras. That's my girl, he said, pulling me into a hug. 7 cameras, you said. 8 now, I replied. Added 1 more after the arson attempt. He laughed. Can never be too careful. My mom hugged me next, holding on a little longer than usual. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. So incredibly proud. Thanks, Mom. We went inside, and I gave them the full tour. Showed them all the security footage, told them stories they had only heard over the phone. Later that evening, we sat in my backyard, watching the sun set over the neighborhood. The same neighborhood where Karam had tried to silence me. The same community that had rallied together after learning the truth. Do you regret it? My dad asked. Everything you went through. I thought about the fear, the threats, the sleepless nights, the attempted arson. Then I thought about justice served, money recovered, a community healed. Not for a second, I said. That's because you have integrity, he said, just like I taught you. I smiled. You taught me well. As darkness fell, the security cameras around my property activated their night vision mode. 7 cameras now watching, recording, protecting. They had tried to ban them. They had failed. And in failing, they had exposed themselves. Sometimes the things people fear most are the very things that bring them down. And sometimes, all it takes to change everything is one person refusing to look away. Karen Whitmore is currently serving her sentence at FMC Carswell Federal Prison in Texas. Richard Thornton is at FC. Michael Whitmore is at a minimum security facility in Louisiana. All three are expected to serve at least 85% of their sentences. The Meadow Brook Estates HOA has fully recovered its financial stability and now serves as a model for transparent community governance. Sarah Martinez continues to serve as HOA president and advocates for homeowner rights. Barbara Chun retired from her advisory role and travels frequently, visiting her grandchildren. The security cameras remain installed. If you suspect fraud or corruption in your document everything. Seek legal advice. And remember that speaking up is not troublemaking. It's protecting your community. Thank you for watching this story. Please like, subscribe, and share your own HOA experiences in the comments below.